I've recently gotten a hold of the new Pearl Nano live streaming encoder and recording device from Epiphan, and I wanted to make this video to share a first look at the device, give an overview of how I set it up at home to make a side-by-side layout for recording and live streaming, as well as share some of my thoughts after testing this device out for the past several days. First, a quick disclaimer. This Pearl Nano was sent to me by Epiphan to try out prior to the release of the product. They aren't asking me to cover anything specifically, and they will not see this video before I publish it. This video is not sponsored, and I'm not being paid to share my thoughts about this device either way. With that being said, let's start with the physical hardware of the Pearl Nano. Like the Pearl Mini and the Pearl 2, the Nano has a metal chassis, which means it feels substantial and like I can take it on the go without breaking it. I've tried several capture cards in the past that were made of plastic that quit working after a few weeks in my bag, crashing around into the other gear that I carry around, and I don't worry about the Epiphan stuff falling apart. The front of the Pearl Nano features a headphone jack for monitoring the audio of your recording or live stream, an SD slot for storing your recordings or your media files for your layouts, a really handy screen that we'll talk about here in a second, directional buttons and a confirm button in the middle for interacting with that screen, and a dedicated recording and streaming button for those functions. Speaking of storage, on the bottom there's a little door that you can open with a screwdriver and place an M.2 SSD for more integrated storage than what an SSD card will provide. This is an awesome option for making this little thing into an appliance you can put into inexperienced hands. The screens on the Pearl product, probably one of the handiest things about their devices. The Mini and the Pearl 2 both have touchscreens, and while the Nano screen isn't a touchscreen, you can use the directional buttons to control a lot of what the device does. Using the left and the right arrows, you can scroll through your active layout, each of your inputs, all of your audio inputs on a single screen, the system status, including the ever important IP address that you'll need to get into the device and configure more advanced stuff. And finally, it includes a menu where you can set things up without using the web interface if you want to. The menu also lets you get into each input for the device and set an audio delay so that you can sync your audio against the physical camera that's going on. You can set your gain for that audio input, and you can mute certain types of audio devices. I didn't notice a mute button on the HDMI source, USB, or if I had a networked video source coming in, but I did have a mute button available on XLR, RCA, and SDI inputs. From the menu, you'll be able to go into storage and also format your SD card. And you can control how it handles if you plug in a USB storage device into the back of the thing. Finally, under the system menu, you can check the device info, adjust your HDMI output settings, check firmware updates on the device, run a network test from the device, and you can choose configuration profiles, reboot, and you can even factory reset the entire thing if you want to. So that's a lot of stuff that you can do on the device without actually getting into the web portal. It's really handy that you can use those little directional buttons to navigate around and do the most common tasks that you would need without having to have a computer available as well. On the back of the Pearl Nano, you'll find all the audio and video inputs and outputs, as well as the network and the power. First, one of my favorite little things about this tiny little guy is that you can power it by power over Ethernet, or PoE+. I just moved into a new house, and that's the reason why I'm just now getting around to checking this thing out. But I outfit my whole house with a unified network with PoE in every single room of the house. This feature plays really well to me because I never even pulled the power brick out of the box. I simply just plugged it in to an Ethernet cable on a PoE-enabled switch, and the thing booted right up. If you have powered Ethernet in your environment, it might help to know that I'm running a 60-watt PoE switch on my desk, and I've seen anywhere between 12 and 16 watts of power being used by the Pearl Nano. So when it's sitting at idle, it uses about 11 or 12 watts of power, and when I've got an HDMI source, SDI source, I'm passing HDMI out to a monitor, I have a network camera source, and I'm recording locally, it uses about 16 watts of power on my switch. Another thing to know is that the Pearl Nano is actively cooled. So while I'm pushing several inputs and recording at the same time, there's a little fan inside this guy that runs. You can hear it in person, but I haven't been able to pick it up very much on my lavalier mic that's pinned to my shirt. It's been running this entire time, about 18 inches away from my microphone. So let me know in the comments if you hear a background hum in this video from that little fan. For the audio, there's two XLR inputs on the Nano that can be configured into a stereo pair. There's an RCA audio input, as well as the ability to plug in a USB audio device like a Blue Yeti, a Rode NT USB, an Elgato Wave microphone, things like that. So this variety of audio inputs is pretty awesome if you're using the encoder on the go and you aren't sure what crazy audio setup you're going to run into. If there's a properly amplified mixer, you can plug that XLR in. If they've got RCA inputs, you can use those. Or if there's nothing else around, at least you can plug in a USB mic and just run with that. You should be aware that the XLR inputs do not provide phantom power, so they're only a line level input and you'll need some kind of power from an amplifier or a powered mixer that has it all built in. Personally, I would trade the RCA for a 3.5mm jack because that's what I typically encounter the most. But I already carry a little RCA to 3mm adapter from my using of the Pearl Mini, so it's not really a huge issue besides having like an extra dongle in the middle right there. For video, there's a single HDMI input and a single SDI input. If you haven't seen or messed with SDI before, it's found on higher end cameras. I personally don't have anything with SDI inputs, but SDI is pretty cool because it's a locking connector and you can also run it way longer than cables that are HDMI. So to work with the Nano, I picked up a little Blackmagic HDMI to SDI converter. It was about 40 bucks on Amazon, and I was able to turn my Panasonic G85 into an SDI source, no problem. I plugged my laptop into the HDMI port for a screen source, and there's also an HDMI pass-through port next to it, so I have another HDMI cable coming out into my 24-inch monitor. The pass-through allows me to inject the Nano in the middle of my computer to monitor setup, and I haven't been able to notice any lag on the monitor at all. Even though I set the computer to be 720p inside of the Nano, it's still 1080p and 60 Hz on my monitor. So it's a nice clean signal in the device and out of the device. This HDMI pass-through port is what you'd want to use to plug into a projector in the room if you wanted to just output whatever the laptop is sending, like a PowerPoint slide deck. One thing it's missing right now is the ability to plug in a USB webcam, like a Logitech C920 for your camera input. Epiphan has said that they're coming out with a new firmware in a few months that will add that, so I'm really looking forward to the ability to plug in just a simple USB camera. A big challenge for democratizing live streaming is that you have to teach people how to use shutter speeds, ISO, what white balance means, and all that other camera jargon. It's way more accessible to just throw a webcam in a Pelican case and have them use that. The HDMI output is the last portion on the back that allows you to send the whole program layout if you need to, or you can send any of the inputs by themselves out of that HDMI out port to use as a confidence monitor. I think I'd probably mostly use the program output as a confidence monitor so the presenter can see exactly what the audience online happens to be seeing. All right, let me show you how I've set mine up on my desk at home. For a simple side-by-side layout, I've got my laptop plugged in over HDMI, then I've got HDMI pass-through back out to my monitor. Next, I've got my G85 camera and a microphone coming in over SDI. Finally, Ethernet is providing the network and the power for the device. I've created a little layout where I can fit both my computer and the camera on screen at the same time. And this is something that you can't do with the products like the ATEM Mini, for example. The ATEM allows you to do a picture-in-picture, put it in the corner, you can change a circle around the picture-in-picture if you want, but you can't do a true side-by-side with another source. That's called a super source, and it's reserved for higher-end devices like the 1ME from Blackmagic. On this layout, I'm able to also add graphics and text in a what you see is what you get type of format. I can click on it and move it around. So I've got my little name tag right here. I simply just type my name, I added a background to it, and I can put it on top of my camera view, and then I've got a title up here at the top of my presentation. Adding a picture is also really easy. You can just click right here and you can add a picture source, and then from your downloads or from your desktop, you can grab that picture and drop it onto this gray box right here. That will import it into the storage on the Nano. Now I can click on that source, I can reset that little picture, fit it next to my title right here, and then I can just hit save, and it will save all of my changes to the live stream or the recording if it happens to be in progress. Another thing that Epiphan has said that they're going to be including in a future firmware update is the ability to freely resize your sources. You'll notice pretty quickly that you get a little no smoking sign on your cursor whenever you go to try to resize your camera or your screen input. And the more powerful devices like the Pearl Mini or the Pearl 2, you can just freely stretch those and resize them to whatever you need to be. You can make your computer sources larger or smaller just by clicking and dragging them. What you need to do on the Pearl Nano is you have to go into the actual source itself, like I can go into the camera right here, and then you want to scale that down to a smaller resolution than the stage that you're trying to fit it into. Once I resize that, then I'm able to go in here to the layout. I was able to click on right here, and then I was able to use a crop to get it where I needed it to be and kind of make it nice and skinny so that I've got me right next to my screen. One thing that really bums me out about the Pearl Nano and the power that it has is that you can't have more than one layout on the Pearl Nano. The Nano isn't designed to be a video switcher. Rather, it's really dedicated to be an encoder and a recording device. I understand that it's probably due to the CPU or the RAM that's available inside the box, but it's not quite an end-to-end solution for live streaming by yourself if you can't at least have a pre-show, a post-show, and an emergency BRB screen. Honestly, I do spend most of my time in the side-by-side layout, so if I only have one layout, that would be okay, and I would probably just use that side-by-side. But I feel like it really rounds out your show a lot if you can start early with a we'll get started screen and you can end well with a thanks for watching screen. It just adds a little bit of polish to your show. One way that you could get around this is you could use layering inside of the layout screen so that you could have a dedicated producer do some live layout editing to kind of make the show more interesting. To try this out, I've got a Eufy camera set up that's configured over RTSP. I added that as a source and I cropped it down so that it fits the same space as my main camera. So since I've got that second camera here, all I need to do is click and drag to rearrange that camera on top of the other one and then hit save. And now I've pushed a new camera angle out to the live stream. If I want to get the original one back, I just click the camera, drag it back up, and go ahead and hit save again. This gives me a little bit of capabilities, but it would be nice if I had a few layouts pre-programmed, and then I could use something like a Stream Deck using OSC commands to just simply switch between them during the show so that I could do it all myself. While the Pearl Nano can be seen as pretty limited for those of us who are trying to push the limits of what we can do by ourselves, I see the Pearl Nano being an awesome device to deploy to physical locations or to send out to people who just want to have a higher quality recording or live stream than what you can get on Microsoft Teams or a Zoom call. A super powerful thing about the Pearl products is that you can configure the layout, get all the settings just right for your company branding, things like that, and then you can save it as a configuration preset. Now, no matter what the user does to mess up the layout, they or you using the Epiphan cloud can just reset it back to that preset and then press record. And you have that consistency across all of your recordings, like you're scheduling, a bunch of recordings for a virtual conference. All those sessions can look the same because they all use the same configuration preset. One of the best use cases that I see for that Pearl Nano is throwing it in like a little Pelican case with a long USB cable, the power cord, a USB webcam when the USB video comes available, and an HDMI cable for their laptop. Then you could just send it to a presenter, tell them to plug in the power, network, USB, and their laptop, and then they can just press the record button to give their virtual conference presentation and send it back to you. You can then pull the file off of the SSD or the SD card and get it that way. If you configure the Epiphan cloud on a bunch of Pearl Nanos, you could even control the recording or the live streaming from the cloud web interface remotely. So you could send these things out, you could have a back channel call through Microsoft Teams, and then you could press the record button in the Epiphan cloud when the person is ready to give their presentation. Another use case that I could see the Pearl Nano fitting really well for is inside of conference rooms or training rooms. If you have a room with an audio mixer and a PTZ camera, you could plug the audio in over XLR. You could have the PTZ camera coming in over SDI, and then a laptop input from the podium over HDMI. You'd then have a great static recording and streaming appliance in the room that you could even VESA mount to the wall. Finally, I think the Pearl Nano could be a great device for a standalone SRT sender. You could pre-configure the Nano to connect to your SRT destination at your house or within your company firewall, and then you could ship it to the presenter and bring them in remotely. You could tell them to, again, just plug the device into network, plug in the camera, shine a light at their face, and they'll be all set. You could again use the Epiphan cloud to start that SRT live stream over to yourself, and you could be having something more powerful like a Pearl Mini or a Pearl 2 in your hands so that you get great quality, low latency feed while using something like Microsoft Teams for that back channel kind of talkback communication. Overall, I think the Pearl Nano seems to fill a gap as a component of a larger overall production. I'm not sure that I'd consider it the only thing that you need. At this level, you're probably going to be adding a more pro-grade camera, possibly a video switcher if you want more angles, and you might even be using the Pearl Nano as an endpoint for sending feeds back home to a larger encoder that handles the rest of the show. The real superpower of all this Epiphan's ecosystem is that you can configure these devices for a secure deployment in an enterprise, and you get repeatability out of it. I've tried and failed to put more complicated devices like the ATEM Mini in the hands of end users and try to teach them what all the buttons do, as well as how to use an HDMI camera, and this is definitely easier to support than something like that. If you're looking for an all-in-one streaming setup, I think if it allowed for more than one layout and you could switch them with OSC commands on a Stream Deck or something like that, then possibly this could be the heart of your home streaming setup. Offloading the compute for the encoding and recording is a pretty big plus, and this device can even handle streaming to multiple destinations simultaneously. So if you're going to Yammer and a YouTube channel and Facebook, you can do those at the same time using this device without taking up cycles on your computer. If you're up for having more flexibility and flashy things that you can do in your live stream, and you're okay with patching an OS, learning what upstream, downstream keyers mean, you're willing to spend multiple hours or days tinkering with the device, I probably would still look at an ATEM Mini or a dedicated OBS Studio setup to have the most flexibility. But I think if you want something that's more of an appliance setup that you can just set it up and then not have to cross your fingers that an app is going to crash, or you want it to be rock solid local recorder in case your network goes down during a stream, the Pearl Nano is a pretty dang cool device that, like other Pearl products, doesn't need a lot of coddling to keep your stream up and running. Anyway, that's how I set up this device at home and some of the ideas that I've been noodling on since I've gotten my hands on the Pearl Nano. If you have any questions, want me to try anything out, or if you just want to let me know what you think, throw those thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.